Hi everyone, we're going to make a start. Welcome. I'm Hazel Clark and I'm Professor of Design Studies and Fashion Studies at Parsons, and I'm really pleased to be able to welcome you all and to welcome this event and the panel. So just a little bit of background. So obviously this event's taking place during the fashion industry's highlight in New York, which is Fashion Week. But the event aims to identify, address, and deepen our understanding of the social and systemic issues that challenge and pervade the fashion system. So topics tonight that will be raised as a focal point will be solutions-based discussions and will include subjects such as cultural appropriation and cultural sensitivity and what fashion makes possible in a tense political climate. The event is made possible through the support of Chromat and the School of Fashion at Parsons, and it's also held as part of the Nth Degree, which is a curated series of events at the New School featuring thinkers, visionaries, and creators who bring about positive change in the world and redefine the cutting edge. The series continues the New School's century-long tradition of forward thinking by spotlighting lectures, performances, panels, and other public programs for curious minds. And for those of you who don't know, the New School was founded, as I've just said, nearly a century ago in New York City by a small group of prominent American intellectuals and educators who were frustrated by the intellectual timidity of traditional colleges. The founders included Charles Beard, John Dewey, and Thorstein Veblen, and they set out to create a new kind of academic institution, one where faculty and students would be free to honestly and directly address the problems facing societies in the 20th century. And that mission continues to be as significant in the 21st century as it was in the 20th, if not more so. The difference today is the composition. Well, there are many differences, but one of the differences is the composition of the university. Over years, the institution has changed and grown. In 1970, it encompassed Parsons School of Design, and over the last decade, the university has integrated its subject areas more closely to become a leading center of the social sciences, performing arts, art, and design. And it continues to work across all the areas to reinforce its mission of intellectual freedom and social justice. So as part of that mission, today we're turning the attention to issues of culture and justice as they apply to fashion. And as a reminder on this poignant day of September the 11th, of how there continues to be a need for discourse and dialogue, and that today that's more important than ever. So with that, I'd like to ask our panelists to come out and join me. So I'm going to start, I'm using alphabetical order of last name, just so there's no confusion. I'm going to start with Amy Farid, who is in yellow in the center. And Amy has been a key hairstylist at several shows during New York Fashion Week, past and present, including working with Hood by Air. Her clients also include Interview, Elle, 3.1, Philip Lim, MIA, Chromat, and Teen Vogue. She's a member of the Osage tribe and also of Middle Eastern descent, and Amy brings inspiration from her rich ancestry as well as from youth culture and the arts to her work, making her a unique creative force in the fashion industry. And then Anastasia Garcia, who's on the far right. Anastasia is a Latina photographer and body positive activist based in New York City. She is most known for her use of photography to challenge exclusive beauty norms by using a range of diverse models, particularly plus-size models. She has published writings on the importance of diversity in media and most recently starred in the film Straight/Curve, Redefining Body Image. And then next, in the black t-shirt, is Aurora James, who is a fashion designer and a native of Toronto and the founder of Brother Vellies. And she has two specific goals in her work: to introduce her favorite traditional African footwear to the rest of the world and to create and sustain Artisanal Jobs in Africa. And then in the white is Elaine Welteroth, who's editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue. And Elaine is largely responsible for the expansion of Teen Vogue's coverage to include a wide range of feminist, social justice, and political topics, alongside fashion, beauty, and entertainment news. Elaine joined Teen Vogue in 2012 when she became the first African-American ever to hold the post of Beauty and Health Director at Condé Nast publication. And then finally, on my left here, someone who many of you will know, Kim Jenkins. Kim is a part-time lecturer in fashion history and theory at Parsons, and she specializes in the social, cultural, and historical influences behind why we wear what we wear, specifically addressing how politics, psychology, race, and gender shape the way we fashion our identity. And I'm also proud to say she's an alum of our MA Fashion Studies program. So I'll hand you over to Kim as moderator, and a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. This is a pretty exciting moment for us. This event stems from a workshop that my academic partner and colleague, Jonathan Michael Square, and I had put on here at Parsons. Jonathan, you could. It is called Fashion and Justice. We put on a workshop in July here where we presented a day-long event where we lectured about the intersections of fashion and race. I positioned it in contemporary fashion. Jonathan spoke about it from the 19th century and enslavement and the role that dress and the business of fashion plays in terms of justice, and just getting our registrants to think critically about fashion. So we had several people who had registered for the workshop, and one of them was Becca McCarran, designer of Chromat. This entire event was an idea of Becca McCarran. She spoke with me after the workshop and said, we have to get this out beyond a workshop, out to the public, and address these issues head on with the fashion industry right in the middle of New York Fashion Week. And we put it together. And so here we are. And so I'm very excited to be seated here with such a dynamic panel of women who've all agreed to address these issues here today. So we will be discussing items like our cultural identity, cultural appropriation, personhood, solutions more than anything when it comes to addressing these issues in the fashion industry. And most of all, at the end, we've carved out about 30 minutes for a Q&A for any questions you have, because this is such a critical discussion, and I want to make sure that we also hear from you and that you're able to engage in this dialogue. So, without further ado, I'd like to get into it here, and let's have a conversation about fashion, culture, and justice during New York Fashion Week. So, I want to start with you, Elaine, and I'm going to ask each of you about your cultural identity growing up. Is it something you always embraced? And in what ways has it shaped your work and the trajectory of your work?
First of all, hi, everyone. This is so exciting. You are so lucky to go to a school like this. For those of you who do go to this school, it's beautiful, and I kind of am a little bit jealous, wish I came here. It's my first time at Parsons, so thank you for having me. Cultural identity, is it something that I always embraced? I would say, as someone who came from a mixed-race household in a predominantly white neighborhood, it was very hard for me to accept any aspect of being different. You know, I think when you're growing up, you just want to blend in, and you sort of judge yourself based on what's around you. That's the norm, and sort of what media images are being projected. And so I have a lot of memories of examples when I did not embrace my cultural identity or ethnicity. I remember being a very young girl and begging my mom to get me this particular ballerina doll. And my mom waited in line for hours and got me the doll of my dreams. And like, it was way too expensive for what it was. And, it was a pain in the butt for her. She got it for me. And when I opened it, she saw me just kind of like say like thanks and like put it to the side. She was like, girl, I waited in this line. You were gonna play with this doll and you're gonna do it right in front of me and you do it right now. And she's like, what is the problem? And I just said, well, I wanted the one on the commercial. My mom bought me the black one. And there were things like that I remember, and it just pierces my spirit and my heart, because the only reason I felt that way was because the blonde white doll that was shown on TV was clearly presented as the superior version of that doll. The black doll was in the back. So that being said, I think I've very early on recognized the power of images, the power of media. And so when I started at Teen Vogue as the beauty director, I didn't really walk into it with a sense of, I'm coming in here to increase representation and start a conversation about race necessarily, until I saw on basically day one that the headlines read, Teen Vogue hires a black beauty director. First black beauty director in the history of Condé Nast in 107 years. I didn't know that. So I learned from the headlines, and very quickly I saw, this is not a post-racial America. So I will never just be good at my job, or I will never just be the beauty director or the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue. I will always be prefaced as the black one, the youngest one. And so those are things that I learned to embrace as I stepped into that role. And I saw that I had a unique power and a unique opportunity to do storytelling that no one else could do previous to me. And so I embraced that responsibility. And I think my very first story at Teen Vogue was about embracing my curly hair, the bigger the better, because and embracing, just telling the story of my natural hair journey, of like actually learning to, like, this is the biggest my hair's ever been in my whole life. And I spent like 19 years of my life straightening it, using gel to keep it as small as possible. And I think that's uniquely tied to cultural identity and where I was in my process of embracing it. And so yeah, here I am, big hair and all, in my role as editor-in-chief, and it definitely plays a part in the storytelling that we do, for sure.
That's beautiful. And did you find that in doing that, you were kind of working that out on yourself once you were thrust into that role? And
I had worked through a lot of that. I'd worked through a lot
already.
of that. I think what I worked through professionally is leaning into it in decision-making position, in my decision-making position, like leading the editorial vision with that, leading with my race and not feeling ashamed about that, or not. I think for a period of my career that I wanted that to be secondary, and it bothered me that was the first thing that people noticed, but that's the world we live in.
Yep.
My race steps into the room before I do. And so I need to embrace that, recognize that, and actually recognize the power in that. But in terms of like embracing who I am and all that stuff, I think I did work through that through college. So for those of you in college, if you're not there yet, like, don't worry, give yourself some patience, you'll get there. But yeah.
Great, thank you. Amy.
Hi everybody. So great to see so many people here tonight for us in this space that we can all share these amazing stories. And I am American Indian, Native American, Indigenous, from the Osage tribe, or Wajaji in our language. And I'm very honored to be up here with everybody and with all of you right now. So what Elaine was talking about, kind of coming into your own at a later age. I grew up going to our traditional ceremonial dances and in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, which is where my mom lives, back on our reservation. And you kind of take that for granted when you're young and you're kind of growing up and you have all this beautiful culture kind of around you. But in those places in the Midwest, you have this intense, beautiful culture side by side by, intense white places and Confederate flags and racism. And so you learn to navigate within those spaces really well. And you don't realize it till you come to this beautiful place called New York City, where it is this beautiful freedom where you can engage with anybody from anywhere, and it's so beautiful, and you see the diversity, and it makes your heart sing. And you can go after these, goals of becoming this hairstylist that I am now. And growing up, I was totally into fashion. And I grew up 2 hours north of my tribe's reservation in Wichita, Kansas. And there's not a lot of fashion victims like myself. And so when I met my best friend, who was a Pakistani immigrant, he and I, this was in 94? Yeah, because he graduated, yeah. So 94, and we met, and I found him randomly at an after-school photo shoot for a thespian club yearbook, which was really great. And we were basically like, wait, you were the one who wrote that Dolce & Gabbana piece in the school paper? Because I would be reading the school bulletin paper. I don't know if you guys had this in high school. We had papers, and you could, blah, 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 creative writing. And so there would always be these pieces about Obsession Cologne and Kate Moss. And like, this is 90s, so, it's like amazing. But, so, it was like Dolce & Gabbana, the hippie collection. I was like, who is writing this? Like, who? I found him, and that's my best friend, that's my boo. And so we started taking our beautiful friends in high school and shooting them and emulating these editorials that we were seeing in Vogue and Bazaar in the 90s, and they're still really beautiful pictures. And so I found back there, I found my, my creative outlet, where my passion was. And, my mom didn't quite understand it. And she was like, you're playing dress up. And I'm like, yeah, I am, but I think there's something there. And eventually, I didn't have a role model or a mentor. There was nobody really doing what I did that I knew that looked like me or that I saw. I had no awareness of that. And I didn't care. And it's something that's so amazing when you're young like that, where you're just kind of like, I have to do this. There's no other option. Something's gonna, help me do this, and it's the universe. And when you put it out there, it helps you, and it did. And Shiraz, the photographer friend, ended up moving to LA, and I went out to LA and hung out for a little bit, and ended up having this revelation on a beach. It was sun gazing. I was burning my retinas, and the universe spoke, and it was like, girl, go back to hair school, get your Cosmo license, and then move to New York and do this what you want to do. And that's what I did. I went home, moved back in with my mom. I think it was 19, and then got on a Greyhound bus in the year 2000 and from Wichita, Kansas, and came to Port Authority. And I had only heard of one place in New York to work, or that I had known because I had read credits in magazines, and it was called Bumble and Bumble. And I was like, they have a salon. Oh, that's perfect, And I was very fortunate. I had great older gay men that helped me lie on the resume and made me sound fab, mind you. I'm trash. I had no qualifications whatsoever. But, I had an eye and I had that drive, So I was like, get it, I'll do whatever. So I got this job, right? And I started assisting, and that was it. And I it was just this path that just helped me. And I think it's just, I didn't have someone to look up to. I was like, it's up to me or no one. This is my life. What am I, this is what I gotta do. So I had nothing to lose. I was very thankful. I was raised by an amazing single mother who did her best and let me be creative and drive her crazy, completely nuts. And she supported me and still supports me so much. And I'm super thankful for that. So yeah, like I had no one else, so that was my drive to be like, I have to do this. And I didn't realize that till recently when we had a panel discussion at the Museum of the Native American downtown, where they were kind of asking me similar questions about mentors and who did you look up to? And I was like, wait, there was no one. It was me. I'm the one. So I'm the one. Like, I did it. So maybe, like, there are other young Native brown girls that are seeing this and be like, you can do it too. And, like, so I don't know. Is that the question? I feel like I really went off. Is that okay? Okay. I feel like that was like an icebreaker. They put me next, like, to be the icebreaker, to be like, okay. But
You took us through the full arc.
Yeah, okay, I did the arc. Yeah, I'm done. Okay, thank you all. Okay, cool. I'm gonna stop.
Aurora.
What actually was the question again? It was about culture,
Identity,
right?
Just, and how that may have shaped your trajectory.
Got
in the
it.
work.
So I'm from Canada, very special country. And I think what was a little bit different about me is my mom was adopted at birth, and my dad passed away when I was very little, and I didn't know any of his family. So growing up, when it came to what my actual background was, my mom was like, well, I don't know what mine is because I was adopted at birth, and your father is from Trinidad. And I was like, okay, so I'm like Trini and white. So I kind of rolled with that. And then when I was like 16, my mom was like, so I took a DNA test. And I was like, okay, great, what happened? And she's like, I'm Inuit and Irish, so we're Inuit and Irish. And I was like, okay, so I'm Inuit, Irish, and Trinidadian. And she was like, Trinidadian? And I was like, yeah, like, you know, that's what Dad was. And she was like, oh, no, he was from Ghana. And I was like, but hold on, like, we lived in Jamaica for 3 years. Like, I thought I was an island girl. And she's like, you can be whatever you want to be, girl. And I was like, but this is major. And she's like, why? Do you think that it makes you different than what you thought you were? And I was like, I guess not. And she was like, I'm adopted at birth. For all you know, the person sitting next to you could be your brother, sister, mother. So you have to explore all identities like they could be your own, and you have to support all identities like they could be your own. So that was very much sort of how I came into the conversation about culture. And we spent a lot of time growing up like visiting different communities and learning about different cultural apparel. And she had an amazing collection of like fantastic kimonos and like Dutch clogs, and she would kind of talk me through all of these different things and why they were important and why they shaped and built heritage. And even when I was younger, before, you know, she found out that she was Inuit, we would always visit some of the reservations in Canada, and we would like look at amazing like beading, you know, and how they used the deer and ate the deer and then turned that deer into a pair of moccasins. So that conversation has definitely been a big part of my life for sure.
And so with your work, was that almost intuitive for you to just, this kind of fluidity you have with identity and geographical location with the work that you end up doing with artisans?
Yeah, I think
like
it was
Ethiopia?
kind of inevitable because for me, you know, I started traveling through Africa in my mid-20s. The first place I ever went was Morocco, and then Nigeria and Namibia, and on from there. And I was just seeing all these amazing artisans make these things, and I was like, I've seen this in fashion magazines before, but like not this good. And I don't think that you were involved in that, and I feel like it was done at a sweatshop, but like, this is better. And I feel like we can do something with this. And I had went through a phase where I became really disenfranchised with fashion because my early experiences with it didn't involve any kind of empowerment of women. Being a woman of color and being a woman who struggled with my own identity and feelings about myself and who I was and my place in the world, I felt like I didn't feel better going through a fashion magazine. I felt worse about myself. So I knew for me to make a return to fashion, I would have to do it in a way where I could let the industry that I love empower women in the process. And so for me, that's why I created Brother Vellies. Thanks, guys.
Anastasia.
Hi, hello. My family comes from a small town in Puerto Rico called Ponce, and hey, I grew up on a military bases, so we traveled the world my whole life. So it was interesting because on every base you would go, they would have what they would call like a Hispanic Heritage Committee, and each community within military bases would have its own community. So being Hispanic was always part of my life. You know, it was no matter where we went in the world, whether it was in Japan or in Germany, that was always a part of my life. It was always interesting, like, because I am white presenting in a lot of ways. I always felt 1,000,000% Hispanic, my whole family. It's just so much a part of my life. But people were always like, oh, you don't look Spanish. And I'm like, oh, I don't? Like, oh, okay. Like, it was always a weird thing. But for me, it didn't start to come out until in my work until I started shooting photography. And I always knew growing up that my body was kind of an anomaly in fashion. And if you add any other race besides white to that body, it becomes an even smaller margin of what's represented in media. So when I became a photographer, moving through school before I graduated, I kind of understood that models looked a certain way. And if I wanted to be successful in the fashion industry, I would have to shoot a certain type of woman. And I didn't even question it because I just wanted to be a great fashion photographer. And I didn't see any other fashion photographers shooting many models other than what had historically kind of been presented. So once I started making the decision to kind of, first of all, accept that I was fat because I didn't know. I realized that it was my responsibility as a photographer to be cognizant of the work that I was creating and to make sure that I was representing diverse bodies and also representing diverse races, because I believe that body diversity and race is intersectional, because I didn't see any women who looked, you know, maybe the rest of the women in my family weren't as plus size as I was, but I certainly didn't see their bodies being represented in media either. So I kind of realized that if I was going to focus on any kind of diversity, I needed to be cognizant of all diversity, and I needed to really acknowledge the responsibility that I had as an image maker and really create images that weren't going to damage people the way I was damaged by media. So.
And I think this provides a great segue into how you discover that the work you're doing, and you may not have even thought about it in the beginning with the roles that you're in now, how it had a social impact and who you were reaching, who you were inspiring, influencing. At what point did you sort of discover that you had a social impact? And whoever wants to start on this one.
I can start.
Okay.
I was working for an e-commerce conglomerate, the e-commerce conglomerate. I'll let you guys draw the conclusion there. And I was sitting around a table, as I feel like everyone can relate to, sitting around a table having this discussion about what project is going to come forth. And the business was talking about launching their plus size division. And I was sitting around a table full of people, and everyone was like, oh, well, we should just take these plus size clothes and shoot them on straight size models and just pin them to fit. And it was like this record screeching sound in my head. Like, I was fresh out of college. I was 22 years old, sitting around a table full of people who were much older than me. And I was just like, no. You know, and it was one of those movie moments where everyone kind of turns and looks at you and you're like, oh my God, I'm 22 and you guys are gonna kill me. But I was like, you know, you guys cannot expect to sell to a customer and then pin them on this woman who they can't relate to at all. And it was the first time where I realized, you know, being seated at the table behind the scenes, we're so focused on who comes in front of the camera or who, you know, we're fascinated with models and celebrities. We don't often consider the conversations that happen behind the scenes that put this work forward. And that was the first time that I realized that as an image maker, I had I had the opportunity to have those conversations. And I thought it was, you know, it kind of started all of that, so, yeah.
I think that's a good segue to you.
Yeah.
We were having a conversation backstage, and I was
girl,
like, I
it's
need to
psychic.
know.
Well, you know, I started to realize my impact was doing Fashion Week. seeing the work that I do for Hood by Air, what we do to the models backstage, and kind of transform them. And, you know, Shane always casts really, you know, kids, you know, that are street casted, you know, not necessarily models. We don't want to portray this image of this is, you know, this is how one should look in clothes, or, you know, we want to have this dialogue of someone that's coming in and put a super masculine man in a dress, you know, and then I'll maybe give him like feathered hair, and having that as a platform to see like these juxtapositions with gender really spoke to me, and I got a lot of press because of that, and really, really good press, and confused, you know, a lot, like what, you know, early on, before we became so, you know, woke as we are now. I feel like a lot of great things are happening in this world, and in fashion too, that we had this platform to make these, you know, kind of turn things upside down, like, and especially in New York, being, you know, a super minimal kind of fashion week that we have, kind of known for doing a ponytail. For me, hair-wise, you know, it's like, it's very simple. It's like easy hair, a ponytail, or just, you know, like how New Yorkers, how we do our hair, a top knot, you know? So with Hood by Air, we really got to mix things up a bit, and that was when I first realized the impact of that, and seeing this imagery with people that, like, kind of mixing up those stereotypes, turning those upside down, and I've done a lot of interviews about that, and I felt good in that, like, oh yeah, this is something that needed to happen, that is happening, you know, so much, and just opening up gender and whatever gender is. And so, yeah, that was when I first realized my impact in this business.
Wants to go down the line?
Yes.
I think for me, I noticed the impact actually in Africa. We started with this shoe called a Vellie, or as South Africans call it, a Felly. And it was like this tragically unhip thing to wear in Africa. Like, no one wanted to wear it. They thought it was like a cursed shoe. And I was like, you know, this is a traditional shoe. Why don't you guys want to wear it? And they were like, no, like, we want to wear like what Kanye's wearing, you know? And I was like, I mean, Kanye would wear this. And they were like literally hysterically laughing at me. And they were like, like, you know, he wouldn't. And so I think for me, like, having that shift happened with them when they saw like Kanye actually come to our first presentation, and they saw like celebrities actually wearing traditional African shoe shapes and shoe styles that were made by them. It completely changed their value of their work and their perception of themselves. And I think that created an entire shift in South Africa when it came to their own cultural clothing, where they were like, wait a minute, we don't have to aspire to this. We can actually revel in the beauty of what we already have. And we are the creators of these ideas. And everyone else is pinning pictures of us to their mood boards, you know? And we don't have to just be, you know, inspiration or like Pinterest swipe anymore. We can actually like be part of this narrative and part of this dialogue. So I think that a lot of things have shifted within Africa. And listen, like sometimes I'll do sketches and stuff and I'll send them to Africa. Like I work in many places in Africa, but I'll send them to the different workshops and they'll send me back a sample that's completely different than what I did. And they were like, well, yours wasn't good. Like, this is better. And I'm like, okay, get it. You know, like, whatever, you do you. You're the one that's making it, and we're basing it on the skills that you have. So if you didn't like the beating that I came up with, by all means, let's do your beating, because you know better than I do. So it's really about empowering people in the process for me. And when you empower someone to be part of the conversation, that's when you can really see a difference.
Did you notice a shift in when you engage with them as a woman of color, and this might be speculative, of how they regard you, as opposed to if it was a different designer coming in or a label wanting
Yeah.
to use their skills?
I
and
mean, it's very
resources?
country specific because their reaction to a woman of color in South Africa is extremely different than it is in Kenya. And sometimes it's not even about a color, it's about a woman. So early on in Kenya, I had big problems being a woman. I felt like I would need a man to say the exact same thing that I just said in order to get anything done. I think in South Africa, they were like hyped. They were like, this is a person of color and she's designing things and she's telling these people what to do and we are all about it and we're gonna get these shoes out everywhere and this is amazing. Like nothing could stop them. I could have been a woman, I could have been like a, teeny tiny toddler, like that was like, come on guys. Like as long as I was a person of color, they were like on board. I wish I was a teeny tiny toddler when I started.
That's a great
Can we
visual.
do? Like, I have a 7-year-old. Is that too old? Like, that's not a toddler anymore.
I mean,
Like,
start them young.
I mean, let's do it.
No, I'm like not for child labor, just to
Oh
be
yeah,
clear.
oopsie,
Amy.
sorry. Can we cut that? Like, is that?
It's called Facebook Live. There's no going back now.
Elaine, please tell us how there was sort of a pivot with your publication, with when you started to realize that it was time to kind of take things to the next level and become sort of politically engaged, and that your work had the potential for some crucial social impact.
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, as a black woman, I understood the politics of hair and beauty, and I started at Teen Vogue as the beauty director. So I very quickly, like I said, from the very first story, recognized that all I wanted to do was tell stories that only I could tell, because I recognized there was a need for them in the market. There was a lot of, I came from a black magazine initially, and I think part of my, like when I left that magazine, I felt like there was pressure, probably self-imposed, to assimilate in order to ascend. And I realized coming into Teen Vogue, it was actually the very opposite. It was like stripping away the thought that I need to assimilate, that actually helped Teen Vogue to shine and helped me shine and helped me find my voice as a journalist. And so it was through, pushing forward stories first and foremost about, the politics of black hair at a mainstream youth-oriented magazine. And so I remember the first time that, as the beauty director, that I did a piece that I just felt like it needed to be done. It's going to be controversial. I don't know if people are going to get it, but it started with like sort of me leaning into the table as a black woman and speaking about cultural appropriation and starting a dialogue or contributing to a dialogue that was already existing within our team about like what it is. There's a lot of people on my team that really didn't understand what cultural appropriation meant, and I think as one of few or one of the only black women or people of color on that team at that time, things have changed a lot since then at Teen Vogue, but I had a choice there whether to say like, I'm tired of being like the black representative. Yeah. I'm tired of being the only one here explaining something like this for an entire race or for many different cultures. And so, or owning that and saying like this is actually an opportunity this is a teachable moment for the whole team and potentially for our audience. And so we have to create a safe space at the office first and foremost to talk about this stuff. These are image makers, these are storytellers, and if they don't know what this means, then we are going to be a part of the problem. We're perpetuating this issue. And so we did a story we ended up calling it Cultural Appreciation, because people were accusing us of cultural appropriating, and we kept seeing it every fashion week. Designers being under the same attack, and some people in the audience didn't understand it, and I was like, I get that. We gotta work through this together. So we ended up doing this story where we were like, we want to cast a girl from different backgrounds who have looks that are routinely appropriated at Coachella or on the runways. And we want them to explain to our audience, their peers, what cultural appropriation is and what the difference is between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. Because at that time, I don't think, Teen Vogue or any mainstream media publication was really like considered an authority on the matter, So for us to, we weren't like, we're gonna write the final word on cultural appropriation. We were like, Teen Vogue is a platform to amplify the voices of young girls and young people, and so let's contribute to the conversation through them. And so I remember we were like, we definitely need a Native American girl in the mix because that's one of the biggest conversations around Coachella. Wearing feathers and. I remember people on my team were like, you're never gonna really just gonna find a Native American girl just walking down the street in New York City with and I was like, yes, we will. Like, good luck, girl. And so we hired a street caster and we found an amazing array of young women, including a Native American girl, Donette, who was fantastic. She came with her headdress that no one could touch on set. Her mom, only except for her mom, she explained to us what it meant and the significance of it and how she earned it and why it's so offensive to her when she sees it being appropriated at Coachella by people who have no idea the significance that it carries in our culture. And we all learned, so it was really rewarding just on a personal level to be able to have our whole team partner on this issue, on this particular story, and everyone gained from it. And then when the story went live, we didn't know. People could have dragged us, we didn't necessarily have the trust of our community to speak as authorities on this, on race or ethnicity, social justice or cultural appropriation, any of this. But we did these videos with each of the girls explaining what this meant to them, and it was the first time a beauty story had gone viral. And it got a Twitter moment. It became a Twitter moment when that was a big thing. It was it's a Twitter moment. It was now we know this is a really good story. And P.S. I was scared because as the Black beauty director, I was like, if this goes wrong in any way, I am taking one for the team of And but so it just showed us that there is a need for more content like this. They do want it from us as long as we do it the right way. And so it was really empowering for our whole team. And it kind of changed the way we approach storytelling in general, but particularly beauty and fashion as well, recognizing the cultural significance that we can have through the lens of beauty, the conversations we can start in our audience with our audience through a beauty and fashion lens. Previous to that, I think beauty and fashion just seemed like a frivolous topics, but they're so politically charged. And so that's kind of the beginning of when we started to lean into that. And as you know, the brand has evolved a lot since then. So yeah, I think you guys are all hopefully paying attention to Teen Vogue, because I don't really need to explain, but I feel really proud that today we're sort of the platform that stands for allowing young women and young people to be both. We all contain multitudes, and you can love fashion and love beauty and also, care about what's going on in the world around you and be incredibly politically active and engaged in political conversations in your neighborhood and in your communities rather. And we're not shying away from fashion in the midst of it. We're not shying away from a love of creating and celebrating designers, but I think there's a respect and a balance that you have to have when you're doing that as a storyteller today in 2017, especially talking to this particular audience, which is extremely. I hate the word woke now, you guys. I'm so over it, but we got to come up with a new word. Maybe by the end of today, that's the assignment, because I just can't say it anymore. Woke? As soon as when my white father started to say the word woke, I was like, that's how I know this is done. Done. It's over.
That's awesome. Elaine, I wanted to tell you, I was on a Metro North train, and I was getting off my stop, and I saw this huge ad, and it was the back of the Native girl's head. So it was the eagle feather with her bead, and she had her hair wrapped. It said, I don't know what the little tagline was, but I was like, you can't see if this is a native girl, but it looks authentic. Like it looks like that's a real eagle feather. I know I have them. I know what it is, but I didn't know. Like it was just this beautiful crop of her head, the back of her head with this feather, and I was like, no, Teen Vogue, don't do this to me.
See?
I literally thought
They didn't trust us.
I literally thought that, okay, they got a feather.
Here they go again.
The hair was a little messy. I was like, native girls like it tight. Yeah. Like they like, you know, when you dance, and I think she was like a jingle or a fancy shawl.
Yeah.
I was like, that was like, here we go. Like now I have to drag. So then I did my research and I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And I was like part of the Twitter moment. And then I was like regramming it and Facebooking, whatever you do. And the girls actually, there was another one about, you know, misconceptions or stereotypes about natives. Like, we all get paid for this or Thanksgiving. And so I reached out to those girls that they were like, oh my God, thank you for sharing our video. And I was like, you guys are amazing. I'm so proud. I'm like, so even at 38 years old, like, I'm not used to seeing that imagery. Yeah. So thank you. Like, that's so
Thank you for real.
Like, that's amazing. Like 38, and I'm like in the Stockholm syndrome. Like I'm still so used to not seeing representation. Like
we're starved for it.
Proper. And like even fearful of like, oh no, like they're like, no. So thank you, that was awesome.
Can I just say something? First of all, you're trying to make me cry up here.
Oh girl,
I'm trying to hold it together.
Girl, I'm the crier, so let's do it. We can do this. Let's go Oprah.
Let's go Oprah.
We need a show, like I'm ready.
I know,
I'm
we talked
ready.
about going on a world tour after this, so you might see us
Girl,
in a city.
she thought we sold out
you.
and we were getting, like, we're like, how much were tickets?
I know.
They're like, girl, it was free. We're like, so we ain't getting a cut. Okay. So next time, this was your free. We're gonna see. This was the beta. Now next, it's the real. Okay.
I just want to say thank you for doing your research after seeing that picture and just seeing the headline, because
Yes.
there's
Research.
Do your research.
I
Yes.
can't tell you how. I mean, I know I'm taking it now. I'm answering the question double time, but I'll make this one quick. But the very first time that I recognized my impact was actually not a great experience, because you know, the culture around news today is just headline driven, and so many people just see something on Instagram, form an opinion, or see someone's opinion on Twitter about a
Make a
story they
snap
never
decision.
read, retweet, drag, repeat. And it's so problematic. And actually, so the first time, see, I was gonna go here, but see, now I'm gonna go here. The first story that I did where I really like wanted to lean into talking about the politics of black hair was after a trip, my first trip to Africa. I went to Rwanda and Ethiopia, and I got my hair braided by locals. I came back to Condé Nast with that hair, and the comments that I got, the looks that I got, were just something to write about. And it was right around the time that Zendaya went through her Oscars moment with Juliana Rancic, and there was conversation brewing. I was like, I have something to contribute here. So we did a shoot with a young model with Senegalese twist, like my twist. I am biracial. I wanted a model who was also biracial because it was talking about leaning in, you know, for the first time in my life, embracing my African heritage and going to Africa and wearing my culture and my heritage, like literally on my head and as a crown, and coming to work, and the reaction that I got. And I wanted all of that. It was layered. There were layers to this. There were levels. There was nuance. Nuance does not translate very well on social media. So, and I felt so proud of it. It was like my first time. My whole team was like, they were like, really? Like, okay, so like they were just following my lead, blind. Like, okay, Elaine, we've been dragged before for stuff like this, but we trust you. And I'm like, I assure you, this is the right way. We have to tell the story. It's so important. And you know, it was about how beauty is also activism. It can be activism. And so the story goes out, and someone with like 100 followers on Twitter posted a flash picture of the photograph of the model with a caption that says, "Once at Teen Vogue, cultural appropriating once again. You should be ashamed of yourself." They thought the model was white because of the flash and because she was lighter skinned. She was about my complexion. I mean, she was a brown girl. And So then it got retweeted hundreds of times, and it became a headline on the Daily Mail. Teen Vogue writes anti-black story. Wow. I'm like, how does it make the Daily Mail without anyone reading the story? Like, how does that even happen?
Oh my God, girl.
It got picked up by the US
Everything.
Today. It got picked up everywhere, and my phone's buzzing, I'm on set. And, you know, everyone would say, leave it alone, let it go, it will blow over. Common sense could tell you, we're not going there again, this was a failure, people didn't get it, they're not ready, let's go back to status quo. But I knew that I could not afford to be misunderstood in this case. Like, this is a community that I come from. This is a community that I represent every time I walk into a boardroom, every time I walk into any room as a storyteller. Like, I am here to represent this audience, and I have to explain what my intention was here, and I have to get more people to read this story. So I wrote a letter, which was really risky, and I was very nervous about it, because get it wrong twice and then just forget about it. Like, so I wrote a letter, like an open letter to in response to that letter, in response to all of the negative press around it. And it was so fascinating because on my Instagram, in the captions where people were just coming for me, the model finally chimed in and says, for anyone who cares to know, I'm Black and French. Am I not Black enough to wear braids? And I just wanted, thank you. So as soon as she said that, I jumped in and I said, this is a larger conversation about colorism, because a lot of the people that came to drag Teen Vogue and me came from Black Twitter, and it's like, hold on, am I Black enough to wear braids, but she's not Black enough to wear braids? And did you read the conversation? Did you read the story? Because it's not actually trivializing braids. It's not actually saying that braids are just a fun summer trend. It's actually it's so much deeper than that. And so I was really grateful to have the opportunity to change the narrative around that particular piece, and hopefully to remind folks, before you retweet, before you drag, make sure you do your research. Make sure you've actually read the story and you've taken the time to actually formulate your own opinion about the work. Because then the dialogue is so much more constructive. I'm all for being called out to have a conversation if we've missed something, but make sure you're doing your part, is all I will say. So anyway,
And
I
did my research, and I was so happy. Yeah. And I feel like people, if they would have done their research and read a beautiful, personal, emotional story about going back to the motherland and getting all that, they would have felt empowered.
Yeah. And eventually they did, and that's what felt so good about it. Eventually they did, and as you see, it takes baby steps. Like,
yeah.
I also don't want to dismiss the fact that, like, Teen Vogue had a lot of work to do. And
yes.
And yes, I was a part. So I had some bruises and some nicks along the way, but that's part of progress.
Yes.
Yes.
And
And you can't give up just because somebody doesn't get it, or if you get some backlash. Like, it doesn't mean you should stop. You have to keep pressing forward, and so that's what we've done. And eventually, now people get it, and they're like, okay, they're here.
So
yes,
good.
they're like, Teen Vogue is leading the resistance.
They are.
Yeah.
It's
not.
because of you.
No, it's not. It's because I have an amazing team.
It's because you're the leader.
Woke. Another word for woke. Insert that word. People that work on our team. Seriously, we have the best young people that work on our team. Like,
makes
really.
me so happy.
Wow. Just took us through a journey there. That was a really
hold
great.
hands?
I'm really glad that
What's
you went
next?
there. And now that we've kind of set it up for cultural appropriation, I don't think we'll be able to get through all the images, but Becca and I think we're gonna skip this one. We can come back to it, because just speaking about cultural attitudes in our fashion industry family, amongst our own, I know my partner in this event, Becca, was particularly moved by this quote and brought it over to me, and we just thought, this is a great space to address this quote, because it's not just Marc Jacobs who feels this way. This is sort of the dismissive, or maybe just not understanding what's at stake when it comes to cultural appropriation. He just doesn't. He doesn't think it's that big of a deal. And he's certainly not the only one. So the quote that he had was, there seems to be this strange feeling that you can be whoever you want as long as it's yours, which seems very counter to the idea of cross-pollination, acceptance, and equality. Now you can't go to a music festival with feathers in your hair because it's cultural appropriation. So this sort of aggravation or exasperation with the fact that things are becoming sort of, quote unquote, overly politicized nowadays, that everything is off the table when it comes to cultural inspiration, or design inspiration rather. And so you have creatives like Marc Jacobs who feel that they don't, the intent isn't to be racist or to exploit anyone, it's just to, they're just inspired by a look or a culture or a subculture, and it flows into their work. But something gets lost in translation along the way. And so I want to talk about, kind of work through this quote. I want to emphasize it's not to drag Marc Jacobs, it's just, it's a good example of many of the general attitudes going on in our fashion industry when it comes to inspiration for ideas, an aesthetic, a look, and why this can veer into cultural appropriation territory and be damaging.
I'm just gonna go ahead, jump in here. But I know you have some great things too. So I love this idea of cross-pollination, that Marc is like, yeah, cross-pollination. But if you really honestly wanna cross-pollinate, you're gonna look into a culture that you're trying to get inspired from. And if you did that, if you honestly really cared enough to look into, oh, well, does that mean anything? Does a war bonnet mean anything? And is it okay if a naked model or like, you know, semi-naked model like wears that, or a man wears that, or whoever? Researching that is very easy, and we have Google, and you can see that is inappropriate, and that to wear a war bonnet, it's an honor, and you've earned those feathers, and they're sacred. The eagle is very sacred to us. So yeah, it's kind of this whiny comment of, oh, we can't wear feathers, we can't, because we're gonna like offend someone. We're gonna offend, a marginalized group of people. That this is our culture. Like, yeah, no, if you really wanted to cross-pollinate, you wanna wear war bonnets and feathers and stuff like that, but you don't wanna really live our life and see what we go through as a person, a marginalized person. And I feel that's like with everything, when people, wanna wear certain clothes that, they're like hip hop, or they're this, and they wanna wear their braids, and they wanna be this. It's like, yeah, I wanna do that, but I don't wanna deal in those real spaces that those people have to really endure growing up. Walking in those shoes, that's why I love like that Hood by Air, that whole streetwear thing that happened. It's like, people like really bought into wearing these clothes that, are made popular by these young kids in the streets that don't have the money to, buy the things that they see that they want. But, so that juxtaposition is just such a trip to me to see that. And, do your research. Don't wear feathers, wear flowers. Like, flowers are cool, like bees can pollinate. That's my whole thing. Festival season comes around, and I'm like, wear flowers, not feathers. Like, you can do that, and I've been in situations on set, where you do festival lookbooks now, for fashion stuff. It's a whole machine now. Festivals, you make money from that, So all you designers, you know that, right? And there have been moments where there will be like, oh, we have these like headpieces and headdresses, and I was like, girl, no, no, and they're like, oh yeah, girl, that's like, you can, whatever you don't want to do. I'm like, this should not be happening at all. Like, take it off the site. And I'm lucky that there are certain fashion brands that listen to me and that care about that, you know. So me being in these spaces and having people talk to me is awesome. And, you know, it just comes back to ignorance. People are just ignorant, and I am ignorant too.
Or laziness.
Or laziness. Yeah, it's like, come on.
Like, not wanting to do the work.
Yeah, not wanting to do the work and just wanting to be like, I want to have this aesthetic because it's like shallow, right? It's just this, just a feather. It's not, it doesn't get any deeper. But I was once on a plane going to do a very amazing photo shoot in a very amazing island. And I was sitting next to this stylist, and I was working for a very large lingerie company. And the stylist was telling me, very large, like a big, not like plus size, not like, you know, but like a big lingerie company.
I wish it was plus size.
Really big. I know, right? I mean, they're cute bras. Anyway, so the stylist was telling me about this model who they just shot. She has like her own line. She was doing a photo shoot in Italy, and she was like, "Oh, you're Native American." Oh my God, you know, blah blah blah. She has this beautiful war bonnet that she bought, and she didn't say war bonnet. She said Indian headdress that she bought in Italy, you know, and it's like floor, like the whole thing. And I was just like, oh. And this was my first time traveling with this client. And it was like one of my first times flying business class, and I'm like very bougie, and I'm like, so there's two roads that you walk in this life, right? You're like down native brown pride, right? And then you're like, cool, I'm in this space, and I like want this job, and I need this money. Mama needs to pay bills. So I'm like, but I have this time, I can talk to this woman about this. We met 20 minutes ago, and now we're on a flight to LA, right? And then a whole other flight and a whole other voyage together. And I'm like, I have to say something. Like, you can't. Like, I had knots in my stomach. She told me, yeah, we did this photo shoot, and it was bikinis, of course. And they shot in Ibiza, and it was like this, you know, big war bonnet. And I was just like, oh, you know that's not cool, right? I said it. I was like, you know that's not cool. And she's like, really? And I was like, yeah, it's really not cool. Like if she wants press, and if she wants to keep that, she'll get it. If she wants that. If she wants that negative press, believe you me, she will get it. So if that's what you guys are trying to do, you'll get that. But just letting you know, I told her those things are earned. The feathers are sacred, feathers are earned, eagle feathers. How did you get, like, I didn't even go into like who stole this regalia to, like, you know, whatever. I was just like told her this is like, you can't. And I never saw it. I saw her publish this lookbook of this model's bathing suit stuff, and I never saw, they never printed those pictures. From what I researched, I never saw them. And I was like, oh, did I make a difference? Did I really? Like, she listened to me, and she went back and told this model, and that was like her favorite thing. That was like, that was like her piece she bought to bring for the shoot. This was like the major, and it didn't happen. And I was like, I kept looking. I still, even now, and I'm like, well, let me just make sure, like, you know, before I drag, and I'm not going to. But yeah, and so it never came out. I never saw it, and I saw her bikinis and all that, and I never saw those images. And that, for me, it was like one thing. I'm in this space. I did it. I got to make a little bit of a mark, you know, or like,
That's a big mark.
Don't do it. Yeah, and that's what it is like these people they don't mean to be, I don't know. It's the ignorance, you know, and you know, instead of doing your research, you just want to be lazy about it and be ignorant and unwoke. Sorry, that was so bad. Sorry. Anyway, so yeah, it was, yeah. And you have some good things to say.
I mean, that's a really intense quote. he's someone who's been involved in these conversations. He's not like stumbling around being like, really, what? Like these are, and some people can have this conversation and listen to what we're saying and really still disagree. I think when I look at his words, and I'm a pretty literal person, but cross-pollination, I mean, that's a tangible exchange. And when I see the pictures, like the ones that were on this slide before this that we saw for a couple seconds, there was no exchange there that was stealing. So I think he needs to really think about what he's saying.
And for profit, in this.
And then
yeah,
his
for profit.
other word was equality. And when we take ideas from people who don't have the means to promote their own ideas themselves, we're not displaying equality.
Yes.
So if any of these designers are inspired by a different group of people, they should go out and cross-pollinate with those people.
Yes.
You know, involve those people. I mean, I can promise you that the embroidery by the people that you were inspired by is gonna be way better than like the people that you're getting to do it in China or wherever else. And actually like help and support a community. So, I mean, I don't know. I think what's so important is like actually sitting at a table with people that you disagree with as well, and not just always having conversations with people that you're on the same page with, because it's gonna take an actual real conversation with, you know, someone like Marc Jacobs who has that opinion to actually say, this is why we're hurting and this is why this maybe isn't okay. And you turning my culture into costume doesn't feel good. But some people, you know, have never had that experience themselves because they haven't been marginalized in certain ways, so they can't relate to why it would be a big deal.
Or around, you know, humans that are from that culture that find it like, no, that hurts. Like, we're real people that exist, or we're not mascots, or so. Yeah, it's like being like so divided from people, and that's why diversity in fashion is so important. So you have that
Absolutely.
voice. So like you have me on the plane telling you, girl, don't do that. Like
I think it's all about, you know, you were talking about your voice, and I think it's really just about people speaking up. And earlier when we were in the green room, I was like, you know, I think that I want to know, and I think everyone wants to know, like, how these bizarre photo shoots happen, like with blackface. Like, was there no one on set that was like, hey, can we like just talk about this for a second? Like, you know, it's like at an American Idol audition where that person is just singing, it's horrible, and it's like, somebody say something, like, and it's like no one is saying something. So I think it really takes all of us to be that, you know, 22-year-old in the boardroom that just blurts it out. And I know that in my own life, I'm definitely that person. Sometimes it's annoying, but the way that it impacts, not saying something, as hard as it is for you to say something, not saying something is going to feel a lot harder for a lot of other people.
and to yourself.
Yeah.
Like if I wouldn't have said that, I would have still held that.
Well,
in,
you would have
know?
held it, and then it would have been on Instagram, and all of
would've
these
seen
young
it.
girls would have seen it and been like, why do I feel this way? You know, why is my culture being hypersexualized? And why are we not included in this narrative unless it's like, you know, with boobs or like at a music festival?
It brings up an interesting question, though, because there has to be people with that point of view at the table to question it. Yeah. And there isn't. It's very rare that you see a lot of diversity seated at the table. It's very one-sided. So you can't have people telling your story when there's no one who's had your experience seated at the table to tell it.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Yes, yes, yes.
Because also, like, you know, as a Black woman, like, I know that with that hot mess story, which was, you know, kind of a difficult one, but like, if that's how you're presenting yourself and you're a black woman and you have a wig like that and you have nails like that, like you're not even going to get into the building because it's not accepted. So when the building or when people put those images out and are like, oh, check it, you know, it's a slap in the face because you've been trying to change yourself your entire life to fit in. And you've been buying all the products that they've told you to buy so that you look more like, you know, the girl that they're usually portraying.
Very quickly, when I read that Marc Jacobs quote, the glaring thing that stuck out to me is just the privilege, the white privilege. Like, and privilege is like not having to see what doesn't directly affect you. And we live in the world of Google. Like, you can easily educate yourself if you don't understand it because the world has not made you face it. This type of discrimination, then there's so much research you can do. You can talk to people to better understand before you then speak out again on how you don't understand it. It's like,
Yeah, like you're crying for attention. I mean, it's such a whiny little quote. It's such a little,
offensive.
ew. It's like, girl, like really?
right, there's a lot of things you can wear.
Yeah, girl.
There's
like,
a lot
come
more
on.
you can get away with than I can. There's a lot more opportunity for you than other people who come from these marginalized communities. And so it's important that, like, whether you're white or a person of color, to own your role as an ally and to take the time to understand someone else's plight, even especially when it doesn't affect you directly. And I just think it's just an egregious display of privilege. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's also in such a power position too. Like if he was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna make these jackets like actually in this place with this embroidery with these people. I mean, like talk about job creation, right?
I mean, how amazing would that be if he did that and
Just saying, Marc
empowered?
Jacobs,
Come on, Mark,
hello.
we got you, boo. Like, we'll help you. We'll Google it for you. And we'll have a panel. We'll ask Alexa and Alexas, and like we'll like sort it out for you. Like we'll help you.
He can join the Fashion and Justice workshop.
Yeah, perfect.
We can do that.
Mark, if you're watching, process start.
Invite him to the next one. To Aurora's point, we're in an echo chamber. We're talking to ourselves about stuff we already understand. It's important to invite those people to the table. For us to give them a moment to hear them out, and then also to create a safe space to actually help create progress. He has the power. We actually are. We are incentivized to actually want to reach him with this message, behind closed doors maybe, or in a safe space, so that he can reach the masses with a more conscious message.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, as we wind down our conversation, before we go into Q&A, we've already moved towards solutions, but I just want to, with each of you, just speak once again in closing with some of the highlight work that I'd like you to share that is proposing solutions for those of us outside the echo chamber who want to know, how can I just do better? So you spoke about this earlier, but these are some images from the cultural appreciation spread that you did. So if you could just summarize this once more, so now that everyone has sort of an image to what you were creating, this beautiful and pivotal piece that you did in response to cultural appropriation.
Well, I think even beyond this amazing story that we're really proud of, in order to do more of this, it required changing the makeup of the team behind the scenes, changing the demographic at the table that was having conversations to land here, you know? So I think we've all kind of touched on this, but like it all comes down to who's at the table to speak up for who. And for me, it's very important when I look at my masthead, I want young people to be able to open the masthead and know that there's someone on that team that can speak for me. And so being in a position now, an empowered position now, to be able to create opportunities for other young people of color or just different diverse backgrounds has been a key focus for me and for other managers on the Teen Vogue team. And that's why when you said it's all because of you, I'm like, it's not really. It's a collective team effort. We had to change the zeitgeist culturally at Teen Vogue in order to change the storytelling that you're seeing. So it really started with changing the makeup of the team. And I'm so proud that we have an extremely diverse team. We learn from each other, and that's how we're able to continue doing the incredible work that Teen Vogue is doing these days.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you.
Yeah.
You're so awesome. So yeah, this is the picture, the one from behind with the eagle feather that I was
That you
like,
were gonna drag
I was gonna
Teen
come
Vogue
for Teen Vogue. I was like, hold up. But it was even tighter, so I didn't get to see any of her regalia. And also, I wanted to also mention when Native peoples, American Indian people dance, those are not costumes. And I've heard them called costumes before. It's called regalia. And we're not dressing up as something. So I just wanted to say that. It's really important. I've heard it, been called costumes before, and that's not right. It's regalia. But I feel like having allies, and Elaine is in an amazing position to create this amazing magazine to showcase all of this brown, beautiful, people. And I feel like that is what we can all hope for. Whoever you are, whatever space that you are in, you can be an ally. You can educate yourself. Don't be ignorant. Find out about other cultures that you don't know. If you feel that, that's your intuition. Listen to that. That's your gut. Take that in and really research that before you think. If you're designers out there, if you're young, if you're at the Parsons and if you're in this design, the future is yours and you have the power to change that. Like, you guys can do this. We can all do this, everybody here. And that's why I'm so excited that we had this here during Fashion Week too, and that you guys are the new change makers in this industry. And it starts young. It starts with my daughter, with your daughters, your sons, your grandma, whoever. It just starts with education. And when we start them young, and you guys are young and you're at the school and you can do this. You don't have to fall back into these old stereotypes of fashion. And you can do this. And the world is ours. It's becoming more inclusive, and it's up to you, to everyone, people of color, women of color, Caucasian people. Like, we love the Caucasian people. We need those Marc Jacobs. We need, you need a good white friend, and because that helps you. That's what we need, right? Because it's like, we might not have that voice, but y'all do, and you can help us get to this spot. Becca's here. We're here tonight. Like, good white friend. Like, that's my girl. Like, props to the good white girls. And there's my Lena. That's my good white girl right there. That's my girl.
You know what? Just to Becca's credit, when we were first organizing this, I was like, so, you're going to be on stage with us, right? She's like, no, this isn't a space for me. This is for y'all to have this conversation. I want to give you the space.
Becca McCarran, who, by the way, if you have not seen her show, was the most diverse, beautiful show and that I've seen yet during Fashion Week. Body diversity, everything, hands down. And you've been doing that for years, girl. You're like, whatever. But seriously, that is the future. You make clothes for everyone. Doesn't matter. Y'all, and if you're young designers, you make clothes for fat people. You just gotta make more money. Learn how to shape around a big body, fat. Do it. You're just gonna make more money. It's just good. We like to wear cute clothes.
It's a $20 billion industry, just letting you know.
Yeah. Come on. Just do it. Thank you.
And Aurora, we have a visual of how, when it comes to your design ethos, how does this all matter for you? What does this all mean for you in closing?
The knockoffs?
Even just
Oh, shit. Yeah, like, I mean, right?
how does this impact your design ethos? What you've worked so hard to do and build,
Yeah.
the change that you're making.
Well,
in
the
industry.
Zara one was the first one that that really like happened to us. And when I saw it, it was like one of my old interns sent it to me, and she was like, "Oh man, what is this? So brutal." And I was like, my like heart stopped, and I was like, "Oh no." I just thought of like how big Zara was, and I was like, there's so many of those that must be like on the shelf right now, and ours had sold out, and we were working really hard in Ethiopia, which had just declared a state of emergency, to get more here. And people were showing up at work despite there being a state of emergency to try to push through and get these shoes to our customers and maintain their job and maintain their income. So I posted it with the caption "Stolen from Africa," because I felt like
Drag.
that's
them.
what,
Drag them. That's what they did.
I feel like that's what
Literally.
they did.
It is.
Because
It's
it was you know, it was our design, and we were making it, and we were making it in Ethiopia, and we were working really, really hard at it. And they were just like, boop. And suddenly they were all over the world. I mean, we're talking like 1 million of these. And that sucked. It really did. And you know, there was a lot of press around it, and it started a little bit of a larger conversation, like, what does it mean when you knock off something? What does it mean when you buy a knockoff? And, you know, is imitation actually the highest form of flattery? Because a lot of people were like, you should be flattered, you know? And I was like, it doesn't feel that, like, flattered because Zara liked it. Like, Zara likes everything. They have to. They have, like, 1 million things in there all the time. It's like they're carnivores. It's, so, like, no, that's not flattering. It's not flattering. And then I think, for me, when the Steve Madden one happened, it was the same situation, because those shoes were sold out. We had, like, you know, literally like hundreds of customers that had pre-ordered that pink shoe. And Steve Madden was like, boop, and sold it to like Nordstrom, which was the same retailer that I had. Ours were like $265 and theirs were like $65. So I was like, made in China, and I was like, how am I supposed to compete with this? You know? And this like crazy dialogue sort of started happening like on my Instagram, where some people were like, listen, like, I love fashion, I want to participate in fashion, but I can't afford to spend $300 on your shoes. So I have to get the $65 Steve Madden shoes. And I was like, I had to take a step back and think about that, because the price point of a lot of fashion is in and of itself exclusionary. But just because you like something that I designed doesn't give you right to steal it from me. And you can't empower another person to steal it from us just because you want it to be cheaper. I priced it that way because that's how much it costs. These aren't arbitrary prices. We pay people a living wage. Everyone that makes our shoes has, you know, things. And you can pay someone, you know, 85 cents and make it in a sweatshop and end up with $65 shoes. But that's not the business that I wanted to have.
Which is amazing.
Amazing, yeah, but you still, what do you do in that situation? I mean, and I think for us, we were incredibly lucky because we have a very active social media following that's very engaged, that's not down. So they started, as soon as I did my Instagram story about it, they started all writing to Steve Madden. Their whole Instagram was like totally blew up. And people were like, how could you? This is insane. People were calling the stores. We had really great press support around it. And I actually found out that one of the publications that covered Steve Madden knocking us off the same day got a phone call from Steve Madden saying that if they didn't take the story down, they were going to pull all of their advertising. And that's when I realized this is no joke. And I also realized how much courage it takes all of us and how much courage it takes the media to stand up against these things. And it's way more layered than a lot of us even know or understand, because Steve Madden was a huge advertiser for these people. And I fully expected them to take it down, and they didn't. And that was a Friday. The Women's March on Washington was the Saturday, and that's when they told me they were leaving the story up. And by Monday, the shoes were pulled from Steve Madden's website. And that was just from you guys. Like, there was no lawyer involved. It was just from individual people calling Steve Madden, writing on their Instagram. Like, our voices have power, and that's what we need to realize.
Wow. That is...
And like, because of those people writing and calling, like literally people in my workshop were going to be able to continue to work and make these shoes because the knockoffs were getting pulled. And it does have an impact. Those knockoffs do have an actual impact on your business. And I know that it's really like easy to just go into these stores and buy stuff. But just think about what you want to support, and know that every time you spend your money, you're voting with that money, and that exchange is a form of empowerment. So when you go to, Zara or Forever 21 or any other company and you're choosing to spend your money there, you are exchanging power with that business. And in 2017, we need to make sure who we're giving power to.
Yes. Preach.
Anastasia?
I have like 4 Teen Vogue subscriptions, just saying. I'm trying to empower.
Yes.
Power.
All right, well.
And then we'll go into Q&A.
The brain processes an image 60,000 times faster than a word.
Wait, repeat that. What'd you say?
The brain processes an image 60,000 times faster than it does words. So for me, which is all I can speak from, it's about understanding that we are inundated with imagery and making that imagery something that will empower people and that will support communities that need to be supported and empowered. Excuse me. I try to think of 3 things whenever I'm working, and the first one is to realize my own biases, which isn't always easy to do, but we all have social programming, and it doesn't just go away unless you deconstruct it. And sometimes facing it is not easy, and sometimes people around you will call you out, and it will be uncomfortable, but it's important before you address anything to do the work within yourself. Number 2, yes, as we've all kind of talked about, speak up. Again, I promise you there will be times when it's uncomfortable. Most of the time, it will be uncomfortable. But you have to keep doing it because we need to hold each other accountable. We need to share our experiences with people who don't have them because it's the only way we're going to create any kind of change. And the third one is to be the change. If you're designing clothes that you can't wear, you need to change how you're designing. If you want to support marginalized communities, you need to be working with marginalized communities. You can't look around and wait for things around you to change. You have to change them, and it's not always going to be easy, but it's the only way things are going to happen.
Yes. Preach. Yes.
So, about how much time do we have for Q&A? I know we run over with this. 0? Just a few questions. If people can line up, we've set up 2 microphones here.
Fast.
So if we only have a few, we've got to make them good. So it did. We had to get through this. This is a lot to work through. Okay, so.
Hi.
So we'll do the best we can since we're cutting off for time. So just a few questions. So.
Hi. At least it seems like you guys are very like supportive and like lift women up really well. And so I was just wondering kind of how you suppress like the like kind of like ingrained idea that women have to be at competition with each other, and how you've like done that with your work.
Is this question for all of us?
Yeah. Or just whoever.
I never, like, Becca and I did the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund together, and I was just thankful there was one other woman. We were the only 2 women, so I was like, we have to do this.
Yeah.
You know? I don't, it's like, what, all ships rise with the tide, you know? So, I've never felt that
I never felt that.
competitive thing. Like,
Never
what are we
felt that.
competing for? Like, there's enough pie for all of us. Or cake. What,
Cake.
what did Courtney Love say? She was like, I want to be the girl with the most cake.
Cake.
I don't feel that. I'm cool to share.
Yeah, me too. I feel that. I'm all about women empowerment, and you know, my mom was really into be independent, do what you have to do, but there was never any weird shade towards other women, and so I love empowering other women. There was a beautiful woman walking down the street last week in Soho, and she had this beautiful, flowy yellow dress on. She was walking, and I was walking behind her, and I had my kit. You know, when you do hair, you have all this kit, and you have all this shit, and you're like struggling, and I look like a mess. But I was following this woman. It was just such beautiful, and on these filthy streets, the bottom of her dress was getting dirty. It was beautiful, and we were at a crosswalk, and we stopped, and I just like went around. I was like, "You look so beautiful. I just have to tell you." And she was so taken back, and I was like, maybe no one else would tell her that, or maybe her good girlfriend wouldn't. Maybe she doesn't have any good girlfriends. And she was like, "Oh my God, thank you." And I was like, "You look gorgeous." Like, she just looked beautiful. It was just a magical moment. So, yeah, I never really had that, but I don't know. Sorry,
And-
oopsie.
Do we have time for one more? And then we can do a couple, okay, because I know we have a time crunch for one of our guests, so then we can just sort of speak privately afterwards.
Hi, my name is Lei, and I thank you all for like sharing your experiences and everything. I'm from China, and then when I heard your comment on like embroidery made in China is like of less quality, I just want to like give more information because it felt kind of hurt. Because China is actually it's actually the earliest country who discovered silk, and we started to actually use that for embroidery first. And then we have really famous embroidery. It's actually one of our most famous craft. They're like four different types: 香绣, 苏绣, 蜀绣, and then the last one is I forgot. Sorry, but they're called 刺绣 in general. So they are really like the real authentic Chinese embroidery. They're really high quality. So I just want to inform everyone that so that China is not, always associated with like bad image.
And like, I think it would be so amazing to like see traditional Chinese embroidery done that way. You know, like make that. Have someone do that, showcase that. Like, let's see that amazing skill from those people who've been doing it multi-generationally.
Exactly. So I think that that's our responsibility to really speak up for ourselves and embrace that into our work to let the world know that this is what authentic Chinese crafts and embroidery are like.
Totally.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then about social media, it does have a really powerful impact. And just as you mentioned, the nuances is not always reflected. And it is definitely our responsibility to do our research. We cannot expect everyone to educate us all the time, although you take the patience to educate like other colleagues who don't understand your culture. But I think that it's also important to realize that there's difference. Intention matters a lot. But then we have a certain intention, but our action might have a consequence that's a different way. So I think it's really important to recognize that, because I have, for example, like I have a friend who posts on social media like Queen of Chinatown, and it's this blonde girl singing the entire time. Like her intention is definitely not to like oppress like Chinese people or like saying this is the Queen of Chinatown, but the impact it brings is still not like revertible. So I think it's important to like recognize that. That's just my interaction with you guys. Not really a question, but and I do appreciate lots of lots of things you shared. So thank you.
Thank you.
One more? We have time for one more, and then we can talk afterwards.
Hi.
Hi.
Am I loud enough? So you guys were so inspiring that I kind of wanted to add my own part of the conversation as well. Growing up with a disability, one of you guys were talking about you saw the black dolls and the white dolls. Where are the dolls in the wheelchairs?
Preach.
Where are the magazine covers with people with disabilities on it? Growing up with a disability that was so visual, I got a lot of attention that I didn't want. Yes. So how do we spread the message for people with disabilities in the way that we want to be addressed? You know, in the same way as like a cultural appropriation, like how do we want to be addressed? Because I feel like with a lot of us, we either are too embarrassed to talk about it. This is something that's very important. But it's also something that affects everyone, whites, blacks, females, males, but nobody's really talking about it. So I was just wondering, how would you guys address this situation? And yeah.
We should talk about doing a story.
Can
Word.
we please?
I'm telling you, this is the one.
No, you're absolutely
The imagery. I'm telling you, I have a daughter who's 7, and if she will see people that, look unlike we look, and she'll ask me, and it's because she doesn't see people that don't look like her on magazine covers or out there, and it's just, again, the imagery. And this is amazing. She's like, let's work.
I work with kids
That's
every
amazing.
day.
Kids.
I work with kids every day.
That's where it starts.
Yeah, and they will always ask me, I wear a hearing aid, they'll be like, what's on the side of your head? Yeah. And I have to explain it in the most basic sense for them to get it. I'll tell them, you know how someone who wears glasses can't really see, right? Yeah. Well, people who wear hearing aids can't really hear. That's the end of the conversation. They're satisfied with my answer.
Totally okay with it.
Exactly.
Just they want to know, like, oh, it's different to me. What is that? And when you have that conversation, and and you also have to be right with yourself, right, to have that, and not get into your emotions about it. To be like, this is great. I need to speak to these children so they realize, like, this is what it is. It's not a big deal. It's like, I look like this. I have that. Whatever.
Exactly.
Once you have that communication, right, and the knowledge.
Yeah.
Thank you for working with children.
Yeah. And something else that, like, while growing up, my mom always told me, because since I got so much unwanted attention for how I looked, she always told me never judge someone based on how they look. It's so stupid. It's like, that tells you no information about them. So me, just like from the age of 6, learning not to stare or not to ask rude questions, it was like my fundamentals. Yeah. And this idea that nobody else has been brought up to think like that, it's so shocking to me. Yeah. Yeah. So Elaine, if you ever want to do like a cover shoot, let me know.
Hey! Where is the
Thank you guys so much.
Let's exchange emails right after this, okay?
Yes! Done. Word. Bitch. I'm telling you.
I got you.
She walks the walk and she talks the talk. Like that's it's not just like fake. Like that's why Elaine is dope. Like and I love you. This is how it happens.
Trying to make me cry. All of you trying to make
Damn,
me
I
cry.
haven't made you cry yet. Okay, come on, next. Let's go.
Well, I think we...
No, we're done. No one.
We keep going afterwards. But we're out of time. Raj is like, out, we've been out. I want to thank all of you for being here. This was such a nourishing discussion, such an important discussion. And it would be nothing without you all, and it certainly wouldn't be anything without our panelists. If you would help me in just thanking them for being here.